Eat, sleep, bet, repeat. That's how we get down on the opening line at EliteSportsBetting.com. I'll be your host, Benny Ricciardi, and this will be part 2 of our after Christmas college bowl game preview. Today we're going to talk about the championship games taking place on Saturday, as well as the games taking place on Monday, which will bring you guys from the 28th all the way through to the 30th. And then we'll have another video coming back next week where we talk about the games from the 31st and, on into the new year. So we got a couple good games here. We got some of the top teams in the country playing. A lot of stuff to talk about. Got the usual suspects here with me. Real Frank Brank, Golfman Paulie, otherwise known as Fried Egg Paulie on the Twitter machine. For those of you who are over there following us at EliteSportsBetting.com over at Elite Wins. So let's start with the first game here. Before we get into the games that people really want to watch and talk about, it is the Camping World Bowl. We got 7-5 Iowa State taking on 10-2 Notre Dame in this one. Hold on a second. Let me get the updated line here. All right, so the line on this game opened up with Notre Dame as a 3.5-point favorite and an over-under of 56. Notre Dame still holding strong, 3.5-point favorite on all these sites. The over-under dropped a little bit down to 54.5, though. Frank, we'll start with you up top here. Anything you're seeing in the Iowa State-Notre Dame Camping World Bowl?
No place for me. I do lean to the under. I would have played it at, like you said, when it was 56. Another game I just missed a little bit. I do have a little bit of an edge on Notre Dame. I've got them at -5, but I would want to at least get a 3 out of that. I don't think I'm going to. If anything, it could go to 4. Like we talked about before, some dead points in there. So some money might come in on Notre Dame late. Notre Dame is an interesting team. That they've been ridiculed in the past about their schedule, and they actually played a decent schedule this year for the most part. And they're probably one loss against one of those better teams away from being in a playoff discussion, at least. Mm-hmm. From being ranked probably in the top 8 or something. They lost close to Georgia, and then they got blown out by Michigan, unfortunately, which kind of killed them. But they played a decent schedule, and they've lost 2 games, and they've looked pretty good, particularly against weaker opponents. But, Iowa State's another team that they played everybody close this year pretty much. I mean, they lost by 10 in their last game to Kansas State, but if you look through their schedule, they've been a pretty good team. I mean, they lost by 1 to Oklahoma. They lost by 2 to Baylor, lost by 1 to Iowa. So they've been pretty decent. Certainly probably should be ranked in some way. But this is a great slate of games. What day is this? Saturday? Yeah. Saturday. It's a great slate of games, and this game is certainly one that I'm interested in watching. But like you said, nothing at the current number unless that total goes back up, or if I get a 3 or something on Notre Dame.
Yeah, the only place I'm looking at a 3, the Westgate has it as a 3, but they juiced it up to -115 there.
Yeah, so you're talking 3.5 anyway, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say everywhere else is 3.5 at normal juice. So really, it hasn't moved. And honestly, I'm with you. I think if it moves, it's probably gonna move in the other direction where it goes Notre Dame -4, if anything. Paulie, anything you're looking at in this one?
No action for me in this game. I'm right on with the spread and the total.
Okay. So, again, one that I know a lot of people will be watching, especially a lot of those Irish fans, like my dad, who will sit down there and root for Notre Dame no matter how bad they are season in and season out, because that's just what they did as kids, and old people are old people, and that's what they do. All right. So now let's start talking about some of the games that a lot of people are looking at. Some of the bowl games where Condoleezza Rice and the crew sat down and figured out who was going to be playing who here. So the first one I want to talk about is the Cotton Bowl. We got 10-2 Penn State here going up against 12-1 Memphis. So this is a chance for Memphis to kind of show if, whether or not they really belong with the big boys. Vegas doesn't really seem to think so. They opened Penn State as a 7.5-point favorite. Big total in this game, 61.5, so a lot of points expected. Kind of come down a little bit. Penn State at 7, so they lost half a point there. And the total has dropped to about 60.5 at even money. Some places I even see it at a 60. So a little bit of line movement, not too much overall. Paulie, we'll start with you. I know you had a bet in this game, right?
Yeah, I see small edge on Penn State here. I make the number 9. Penn State just has a better overall team here, especially with their defense. And then you got Memphis here with their coach Norvell, who's leaving. So a little bit of coaching edge here towards Franklin from Penn State. And this is just one where you're going to have people like look at this in terms of betting it the day of, and I wouldn't be surprised if you get a lot of Penn State money just because people are like, Memphis, we haven't like seen much of them, even though they're a ranked team, and people like know who Penn State is. So I would be surprised if this gets bet up to 8 or 9 by the time it closes.
So in your opinion, you'd probably rather hop on it now, right? We're getting 7-7.
Hop on it now while it's still at 7 for a small play, considering I make the number 9 yet.
All right, Frank, anything for you on this one?
Yeah, I agree with Paul. I've got it at 9, in the total at 61. I think that, it's I would want 6.5, so I'm not playing it right now. I'm not going to get that 6.5. I don't think you're ever getting under a touchdown on this game. But Penn State, people have talked about Memphis, and they haven't played anybody. But Penn State, this is probably Franklin's best coaching job since he got to Penn State. This team was very depleted, especially offensively coming into the season, and no one really thought they would do much. And again, another team that's like a win or two away from one win away, really, from being in discussion of top 5, top 6, top 7 teams. So Penn State's the much better team. We've seen this play out before with, teams like Boise State and UCF in the past, where they kind of catch lightning in the bottle and, in these bowl games, and they think they belong. But Penn State's a much better team, much better coach. Franklin makes questionable decisions at the end of games, but from an X's and O's perspective, he's been a damn good coach for them. So I like Penn State again by 9. I want a 6.5, but if you force me to play some of this game, it would definitely be Penn State -7.
It seems like everybody's leaning to the Penn State side here. We wish we can get a better number, but to be honest, we probably are not going to be getting a better number. If anything, I think the line moves in the other direction for us. So if you want in, now's probably the time to go do it. So pause the video, go make your bet, and then come back, because we're going to talk about the games that everybody wants to talk about. The Peach Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. So let's start with the Peach Bowl here. 13-0 LSU taking on 12-1 Oklahoma, the number 1 versus number 4 teams in the country here. Look at the most updated line I have on this game here. So we have LSU opened at -11, the total being a monster number at 76. Right now we're looking at LSU being bet up to about 13.5 in a lot of spots. 13.5 at normal juice. The over-under is pretty much held steady. I've seen some 76s, a couple 75.5, a 77 with a little bit of juice on it. So around 76 is the number we're looking at here. So, Frank, we'll start with you. What are you looking at on this one?
I got the total bang on 76, so nothing there for me. One thing to note is Oklahoma had a lot of injuries and they suspended some guys, right? So they've got some issues there, and I think that's where a lot of the movement's coming from. With that, I've got it at 14.5, so currently sitting around 14, I wouldn't make a play on this game. That being said, LSU's put together one of the more impressive seasons that I've ever seen in a college football season. They blew out almost everybody. They played a lot of really good teams, and they eked out the close ones when they needed to. So I think LSU, with the injuries and things, will handle them pretty easily and get to the finals here. But from a betting perspective, nothing for me, like everything within a half point here.
Paulie, how about you?
I actually have plays on both the side and the total in this game. So I took LSU -13.5. I make that number 17.5 in this game, actually. And I wouldn't be surprised if this number crosses 14 by the time the game kicks off on Saturday, because you're going to have a bunch of public money come in, and they're going to see, LSU less than 2 touchdowns, and pretty much hammer that, and you'll see it close probably 14.5 is what my best guess would be. I also took under 76 here. I think it might be 75.5 now. I still like it there. That means that, you have to have, if there's no field goals, 11 touchdowns to go over. That does not leave much room for, ability to go beyond that. And if there's any type of, stagnant offense for any bit of a quarter, it's going to be tough to get past that number. And I have a feeling that Oklahoma might try to slow it down and just run the ball a little bit to try to keep the game closer to where they may have a chance if things go their way with a turnover or something like that in the second half.
So let me ask you guys this. You look at who's going to win the national championship, and you're getting a little bit better odds there, all four teams being plus money. You're getting LSU at plus 135. So since you both seem to think that LSU is going to kind of roll this game against Oklahoma, is there any value in looking at that plus 135 instead for them to win the whole thing?
Well, here, let me run through my numbers real quick and kind of get an idea. See, with my model and with the scheduling, I'll admit that it's a little tough to gauge a team like Clemson. But the issue is that I'm getting LSU as a pretty, not necessarily the hands down favorite here. I think each game will be pretty close from a line perspective. I think people were kind of surprised, and I honestly was too. We'll talk about this in the next game, but I had Clemson as a small favorite against Ohio State, which shocked me in my model. So I think people are going to be a little bit surprised to see this Ohio State Clemson or LSU, against LSU, assuming they get there. I think people will be a little bit surprised to see that game in where it's lined out. So I think you're going to be looking around a coin flip on those games. Maybe LSU a small favorite, but that doesn't leave a lot of room on a plus 135. You're already assuming that LSU is going to win this game, but there is a probability that they lose it. So plus 135 isn't, what is that, like 55% or something? 57%. So again, if you factor in just the small chance that they lose this game plus a coin flip in the finals, it's not something I'm looking at grabbing unless you really, really like LSU, like maybe Paulie's model really likes LSU. That's not something that I'm necessarily looking at.
Yeah, any lean there for you, Paulie? I mean, if you figure LSU is going to be favored, even if it's favored by a little bit in the championship game, I mean, you are getting a little better number if you're willing to hop on it now at plus 135 to win it all.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if they're going to be favored in the championship game, though. That's going back to Frank's point. I mean, if they're playing Ohio State, I kind of have that as a pick 'em. And honestly, if they're playing Clemson, they might even be a dog.
Okay.
They might come out as a 1 or 2 point dog to Clemson, which means your money line is going to be probably
135 anyway, right?
It might be plus 110, plus 115, and at this point, I'm not going to let my money sit out there for 2 or 3 weeks if I only have a small edge like that.
Right, so, and then you can play it on the other side if you want, right? So or in the next game.
Yeah. So let's talk about that next game because then we can go back and revisit the odds for those teams to win afterwards and see if there's something there that we might like a little more. So the other game is the Fiesta Bowl, right? 13-0 Ohio State, 13-0 Clemson. The number 2, number 3 teams based on the rankings so far right here. Let's see what we got the number at here for this one. So we got Clemson currently favored by 2. They opened at -1. The over-under on this game opened at 63. It's up to 63.5, so a little bit of movement there, but nothing too crazy. Paulie, we'll start with you this time. Ohio State, Clemson, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I took Clemson here at -2. I make the number -5.5 here.
Wow.
Clemson they haven't really been tested much this year. They obviously had a close game against North Carolina, but I think it's been really hard for the books to set numbers on Clemson just because they haven't had, playing a bunch of the top-level teams and try to figure out, how are they going to play in close games because they really haven't had that many, right? But if you look back to how they've played, like going back to last year, right, they're a pretty damn good team, right? And you now have Ohio State, who has shown some flaws over the last month. The QB who isn't 100%, Field said his knee is 80 to 85%, which probably in all actuality means it's about 50%. Because, if he said it was really 85, he would say he's 100% good to go.
Right.
So I have a lean towards Clemson there. I just think their secondary and their front on defense might struggle against Clemson's offense here.
Okay. Frank, what are you looking at in this one?
Yeah, I have Clemson small favorite, 1.5. So I'm not playing this side there. But like I said before, I was surprised to see me favoring Clemson there. I've been high on Ohio State all year, but Clemson's really made a push down the stretch here to get in the house. 62-17, 38-3, 52-3, 55-10, 59-14, 59-7. I mean, they're absolutely dominating teams. Now the best team that they played was really early in the year, in my opinion, is Texas A&M. And maybe Virginia is the next best team, and my model's got Virginia ranked 48th in the country. So again, they're not tested, but I don't really see a reason to be nervous. It's not like an untested Memphis team. Dabo's been there. These guys are all quality, football players. We're not questioning how good Clemson is. They're arguably the best team, or, I have Clemson, LSU, and Ohio State all very close as being, like the best team in the country. That being said, I've seen these games from Ohio State, certainly seen these games from Clemson, even in recent weeks where, this game means everything to them. They're going to play it a little closer. They're going to run the ball a little bit more, I think. Clemson's front seven is the best in the country. Their defensive backs might also be the best in the country. I have them ranked number 1 on defense. Ohio State's front seven is really good, obviously. I think they'll get some pressure. So I've got this game line at 58.5 on the total. So this is kind of be my biggest edge of the videos we did today. I'm going to take under the 63. Like I said, both offenses have been scoring against extremely inferior opponents. Neither offense has faced a defense this good. Penn State's defense pretty good. Ohio State played them 28-17. If either team gets a lead in the end, I think they're really going to try to milk it out and run the clock out. So under 58.5 for me, and this one's my biggest play of the whole slate.
Yeah, so that's a pretty wide margin because we're looking at like a 63.5 total right here. So you're looking at 4 or 5 points or 5 points or more your model has it at. So that's one that I'm always going to note whenever I see that big a difference. So let's go back to the question I said we'll go back to after we talked about this game. Clemson plus 200 on DraftKings Sportsbook right now to end up as the national champion. Ohio State plus 250. Do you guys see any value in either one of them, especially the Clemson line, figuring that maybe they would be the favorite against LSU? So if they can squeak through here, you're getting plus 200 on this game rather than, taking negative money.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad play to sprinkle some on each of them. I think there'll be a coin flip next week and one of them have to win this week. So, I wouldn't be betting it as a full play, maybe, like a half unit play or even a little less to move on. I think both of them have a good chance against LSU. The main difference is that LSU has as close to a layup as you can in a college football playoff against Oklahoma. If I had to choose one of those, I would take Clemson because, like Paulie said, depending on how they play this week, my model, assuming they win, my model probably gonna be favorites. I think they'll be favorites over LSU, small favorites in my model. Now on the board, it might be a little bit different, right. But there's a good chance I think that I'm playing Clemson next week anyway. So and they're favored this week. So if I had to choose one of those, I would play Clemson. Would you say it was plus 200? So
plus 200 for Clemson, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a bad bet, no.
Paulie, anything for you on that?
I wouldn't necessarily touch that. I mean, if you're looking to, get some of a future bet, I've seen on some books post, what the exact result would be for the final championship game. So, example, I think I saw one book where it said, like, Clemson beats LSU in title game at, like, plus 275. So I would rather go that route because you can get a little bit more value that way. And I think
you're basically making that bet anyway, right? Like,
yeah, you're basically making that bet anyway. So I would go that route. Or you also have, I think, LSU beats Clemson at like plus 310. I think I saw. So if you like LSU and Clemson to win these games, then I think you can make those bets, and you could possibly obviously win both if they win both these games. You'd be locked in a profit. Or if you just want to pick a side and hedge off it, if you want, you can do that as well.
Yeah, so definitely, goes back to what we say a lot of times. Definitely shop around, see what kind of numbers you can get. And, like Paulie was saying, you're basically betting LSU, Clemson to beat LSU anyway by taking Clemson to win it all. So, if you can find one of those bets right there, that might be something to do. And, obviously plus 275 is better than plus 200. So I'll be looking for that number when we get offline here as well because I was about to bet the plus 200 on Clemson. So I'll gladly take the extra money if you're going to offer it to me. So those are the two big games. Now, obviously, when we come back and do the video on Monday, We'll see who won, and we'll know who the matchup is going to be for the championship game, and we'll talk about that in the next video. But until these two games get played, we won't know that. But we do still have a couple other games that we can talk about that are going on Monday. So let's move over to Monday now and talk about some of those games. So we have the Orange Bowl on Monday. Virginia at 9-4 against 10-2 Florida in this one. Let me get the line here. We got Florida favored by, wow, it actually moved through the 14, opened at 13.5. Seeing it at 14 or 14.5 in some places. Started out as a 51 total. The total looks like it's up to about 54, 54.5, depending on where you're looking here. So, Paulie, we'll start with you. Anything on the Orange Bowl, Virginia and Florida?
No play for me in this game. My numbers are 16 and 54, so very close to market. This would be one where watching it live betting, if Virginia happens to score a touchdown and that number, early on, and the number happens to get, 10, 11, 12, maybe even 13 live, that'd be a very good spot to get in because I think Florida does win this game by multiple touchdowns.
Okay, so we're looking at nothing on the pre-flop, but I'm writing down a little note right here about a live bet if we get an early Virginia touchdown here. Again, the in-game line's always a little bit softer, always a good place that you can go and get some value. Frank, anything you're looking at here?
Yeah, nothing for me. I've got it at 14 and 52, so a little bit lean to the under. Both these teams are pretty good defensively and somewhat struggle offensively, especially against better teams. Florida's turned it on as of late, but like I said, Virginia, I have 48th in the country compared to the ranking. This is 24th, so maybe that's why it opened up a little lower. But yeah, it's at 14.5 now, which I pretty much agree with. If you twist my arm, I would maybe take Virginia plus 14 just because of the nature of the game, but nothing significant for me here.
Yeah, anything for you guys around that key number? I mean, again, it opened at 13.5, moved up to 14.5 in a lot of spots right now. And like we were talking about before, sometimes going from 4 to 5 is not that big a deal. Going from 13.5 to 14.5 to get on the wrong side of that 2-touchdown win is normally something that is a big deal. So is this something that you would avoid at a 14.5 or play at a 14, or if it gets back to 13.5, or, just kind of staying away from it altogether?
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with the original movement, from 13.5 to 14. I don't necessarily agree with to 14.5, but it's not like I'm excited to fade that amount of money. Someone put in a lot of money to get on the other side of that. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't shock me to see it go back to 14, but I'm not betting this Virginia team. It's just garbage schedule and not that good of a team compared to the perception of them, especially as of late. I mean, you've seen them play Clemson, and it was disgusting. And not that Florida's Clemson, but they're a much better team than what they've played all year, outside of them. So, I'm not excited to bet either side. If you twisted my arm, I would get on the right side of the 14 just because if they're down 21 at the end with 2 minutes left and they get the ball, then, they get that gimme touchdown stuff. So, but, I'm avoiding this game entirely.
Yeah, 14.5 has backdoor cover written all over it. And Paulie, judging by the way you were nodding your head when Frank was talking, I'm assuming you're kind of on the same mindset of that.
Yeah, I'm on the exact same page as Frank there.
All right, fair enough. All right, so let's move on to the Music City Bowl. We got 7-5 Louisville, 6-6 Mississippi State in this one. Mississippi State actually favored by -4, -3.5, depending on where you're looking here. Looking at a total that opened at 63.5, I see a lot of 62.5, 63, 63.5, 64. So all kind of within that range. 64 with a little bit of juice. So maybe we're talking more 62.5 to 63.5, right around where it opened at there. I forget where we're here, so we'll start with Paulie on this one. Paulie, anything you're looking at on the Music City Bowl?
Yeah, I took the over here in this game. I had it sitting about a 3.5 point edge on the over here, so just a normal play on that. Louisville has had the ability to score boatloads of points when they've had the correct opponent, and I think Mississippi State can be that correct opponent because we've seen them do that as well in a couple of games where the game just goes up and down. I mean, Louisville, when they played Syracuse, they scored 90 points. It was 79 against Miami. 121 points in when it was Wake Forest in Louisville. 80 points with Boston College in Louisville. So I could see a game just shoot out like that, and I'd rather get on the right side of it now. If you don't want to put the bet in now, you could watch the first couple drives. and see what happens. But most likely, you're going to have to be betting into a higher number if there's an early score then.
Now, what like I said, the numbers that I'm looking at here are kind of all over the place between 62.5 and 64. So what number are you looking to get in above, or what number did you get in at, with the over?
I got in at 60. I got in at 63.5, and I make the number slightly above 67.
All right, so that's good because 63.5 is kind of where it's floating in around right now. Frank, anything you're looking at on this one?
Yeah, just because of the scoring ability, I'm liking Louisville with these points. I've got it at 1.5 line. It's at 4.5, so pretty decent spread there with the side. I've got the number bang on 63.5. I think it got bet up a little bit. Started at 62 maybe. But neither of these teams have played in. It's going to be a month or more for each team. So that's it. I'm kind of going back and forth here, but I think that, like Paulie's saying, another live situation where they're going to put up points. I mean, the total is 63.5. It's another situation where Mississippi State gets the ball first. You might get a better number live, even if they kick a field goal where you could get it through the 7, and Louisville hasn't even had a possession yet. So I'm kind of going back and forth on this if I want to do some live stuff or play it, pre-flop here. But I definitely like Louisville, and I'm kind of just waiting and seeing if I can maybe get a 5. I think it started at 5, right? Or maybe even 5.5. So I'm struggling whether to chase it or just hope Mississippi State gets the ball and scores in some way before Louisville gets the ball, and I can kind of get through the 7 on a team that's going to put up a lot of points.
Okay, so it seems a little bit like the pre-flop maybe we're on the fence about, but if the game starts off, Mississippi State winds up scoring on their first drive and it gets through that 7. That's a number that Frank's willing to take, and I like.
And I would say if it gets to 5, I'm going to take it, but I'm struggling a little bit with 4.5, and whether I just wait for Mississippi State to kick a field goal and get a 7.5 or something.
Now again, with these in-game stuff, it doesn't always work out that way.
Right. Louisville gets the ball and then you're screwed.
Yeah. But if you're sitting there watching it and you do happen to see Mississippi State gets in the end zone first or gets a field goal on the opening drive, pushes it up above 7, that would be a good time for you to hop in and, take a little bit there. And actually, that would also help our over. So we might be able to hit the over on the pre-flop, and then, Mississippi State gets the first score, and then we can take out Louisville on the other side and put ourselves in a good position, sit back, and just watch the fireworks happen, which will be something good to do on a Monday while you're sitting there drinking, waiting for the new year. All right, so the last game we got to talk about, the Redbox.com Illinois at 6-6 against California at 7-5. Let's see here. What's the number we got? Opened at -4 on Cal, has moved up to -6.5, -7. Total opened at 44, moved down a little bit actually, 43, 43.5. So I'm seeing the total down a little bit. I'm seeing the number up a lot with Cal at 6.5 and 7. Again, not really key numbers that we're moving through all that much, but significant line movement there. Frank, we'll start with you up top. Anything in the Illinois-Cal Redbox?
Yeah, so I got it at 43.5, so agree with the movement a little bit. In 5.5 on the spread, nothing too sticking out for me. If I saw it get to 7, I'd consider taking Illinois, which would be pretty gross. They're not a good football team, but they play slow and they don't score. And it's another one of those games with a low total that maybe you just can snipe off a 7 somewhere. I personally don't have a 7 available, but if I had to play it, I would consider it. If it got to 7.5, I would play it. But at the current numbers, nothing for me here.
Paulie, anything for you?
No pregame plays for me on this. One thing to note for live action is to watch the first couple series, and if Illinois is not able to move the ball against Cal defense, which I think might be the case, I will be taking Cal, even if it's above 7 on the live line. Anything up to probably 10 on the live line, I'd be okay with. I just want to watch a few possessions to see how they handle the matchup against Cal's defense. And then on the offensive side, Cal's offense is a little bit, healthier here now, and I think they're going to be able to put up some points against Illinois.
All right, so you have nothing pre-flop, but you're kind of keeping an eye on the Illinois.
Yeah, I want to watch a couple series to see how Illinois handles Cal's defense.
Yeah, so there you go. And whenever we have games like this, the college bowl games and stuff going on, remember, you guys can get over to elitesportsbetting.com. We do have a live chat that goes on for NFL games and for college football games. I know Paulie's in there a lot. I'll stop in every once in a while. Tommy will make an appearance here. A lot of the other guys that are putting in plays, between Rob and Frank and MLB and all these other guys that'll hop in here. You'll get some guys hopping in and saying, hey, keep an eye on this or keep an eye on that, which is especially helpful with a lot of the live in-game stuff because, we could sit here and talk about 100 different scenarios, but until the game actually starts, you don't know how things are going to work out. And sometimes numbers will pop up that, based on how we think things are supposed to work out here, the number will just seem off to us and, there'll be a lot of value that we can hop on. And like I said, sometimes we've been getting softer lines in the middle of a game than we get when we have to bet it before the game starts. So it is a good way to get some value there as well. And that brings us through to the end of the games on Monday. So anything you two guys want to add about any of the games over the weekend or the games on Monday? If not, I'll sign us off, and these guys can wait until Monday when we come back with the games for December 31st on through the new year.
No, nothing for me. I mean, Saturday's the day, right? It's probably the best slate of games we're going to have all year. I know the New Year's is some good ranked teams, but I think the Saturday games are way more explosive, way more fun for me to watch anyway.
Yeah, Cotton Bowl, Peach Bowl, Fiesta Bowl. What do you think, Paulie?
Yeah, it's gonna be a good thing to watch. Dave, about that 7-hour window on Saturday where you got the two playoff games. Gonna be some primetime TV to watch there.
All right, so before we sign off, I'm gonna put you guys on a hot seat real quick here. National championship game. Who's it gonna be?
Clemson, LSU, I think. I mean, that's boring, but, two favorite teams. LSU, I think, handles Oklahoma easily, and I think Clemson's going to surprise some people again. I've railed against them because of their schedule over the year. Not that they can control. I know these things are set years ahead of time, but a lot of times we don't know how good these teams are, but they just keep blowing everybody out. I mean, they played one close game, I think, all year, so. I think Clemson is going to beat Ohio State. I think I agree with Paulie. They've shown some flaws here recently. And I think that Clemson's defense is going to get to them a little bit.
Yeah, so Paulie, I know you're betting on LSU already, so I know who you want on that side of it. So Ohio State, Clemson, who are you looking at there?
I took Clemson as well in that game. So it's going to be LSU and Clemson in the final with it really just being a coin flip to see who's going to win the national title at that point.
All right, so here you go. The guys from EliteSportsBetting.com all over the LSU Clemson final. You got a couple more days to find out whether or not they're right, and if they are, we'll talk about it next week. And even if they're not, we're still going to talk about it next week. So for Frank and for Paulie, this is Benny signing off for EliteSportsBetting.com.